Everybody, my name is Shane Coleman from News Talk Breakfast. We're delighted you could all join us here for this combined in-person and online event. It's great to welcome delegates from across higher education, government and enterprise. For those of you joining us online, we have closed captioning available today. You can alter the size of the captions by clicking on the CC at the bottom, or button at the bottom of your screen. Now, we're delighted to be joined by our keynote speaker, Paschal Donohoe, TD, Minister for Public Expenditure, NDP Delivery and Reform. We'll get to the Minister in a moment. He'll share his views on how universities, as generators of the high skills talent pipeline and centres of research and innovation, can contribute to the development of the economy and the country as we face challenges ahead. We've got a great panel for you as well. We're joined by the Provost, Professor Linda Doyle, by Mark Redmond of the American Chamber of Commerce, and by Claire McGee of Ibec. We'll also have some closing remarks from Professor Kerstin May, President, I should say, of the University of Limerick and Chair of the IUA Council. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. Paschal Donohoe, TD, is the Minister for Public Expenditure, National Development Plan Delivery and Reform. He previously served as Minister of Finance from June 2017 up until December just gone. He was elected also to the highly prestigious and important position of President of the Eurogroup in 2020, taking up his first 2.5-year term at that point, and then he was re-elected in December, beginning his second term in January. Minister Donohoe is a graduate of Trinity College, has a degree in politics and economics, which is exactly the same degree that I did, Minister. I'm afraid there the comparisons end, because I'm told you were a double first student. My mark was more associated with the outfit a ballerina wears, or a very famous bishop from South Africa. So, as I say, the comparisons do end. But welcome back to your former university. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Paschal Donohoe.
Thank you, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to begin by saying how pleased I am to be with you all this afternoon, and to offer some words on the theme of how our universities can contribute to national development. And I want to thank Jim and all of his team for the invitation. It is always great to be back here in Trinity College, and I want to in particular acknowledge the Provost of Trinity, Professor Linda Doyle, and also Professor Kerstin May from the University of Limerick, who I know will be participating in this panel in a few moments. I also want to say how pleased I am to be here with Shane. Shane is a neighbour of mine, and of course what he didn't allude to is he's also far better dressed than I ever am as well, which is another point I feel I do have to acknowledge here today. So I do want to begin by acknowledging something that is so obvious to all who are participating in this conference today, which is the first-hand value of education, what it means for our economy, for our society, for our state, and the degree to which it has been transformative in the outlook and perspective for our own country. And while I am, for reasons I'm sure you'll understand, going to focus exclusively on the economic dimension of this today, I do want to begin my words by recognising the profound value that the study of our humanities within our universities offers to our development as well. The role that it plays in widening our creativity, the role that it plays in deepening our soul, is every bit as important as the comments I'm going to make about economics and the role of our universities in that economic development. But this sector here continues to be, in addition to the contribution that on a broader level it makes to our society, an essential driver of our economic development. And that economic development and its resilience, I think, has been particularly apparent as we have grappled with the multiple challenges and crises of recent years. So what I want to do is just very briefly comment on that economic performance, and I want to relate that economic performance to the three S's that I'll comment on in a moment then. The S's of skills, of strategy, and of support. So on that economic performance, I think we all share a sense that in recent years, the frequency of challenge, the impact that it can have on ourselves, our country, and our communities has felt so profound and maybe at a different pace to where we have been in other years. But it's worth emphasising that even with the change in the frequency of shock and what they can do to our economies, that the Irish economy across recent years has continued to perform in a way that is remarkably resilient. And if you even look at where we were last year, stripping out the different effects that very large companies can have on our national economic performance, even when that is removed, our economy grew by 8% in 2022. And while we expect that growth to be very different in 2023, it is still going to grow in 2023, despite the enormous challenges that Europe and Ireland is currently facing. And in all those different measurements of economic performance, the figure that always matters the most to me is how many people are at work in our country. And at the end of 2022, it was 2.6 million people, an unemployment rate of 4.3%, and over 400,000 more people working in our economy since the last quarter of 2019, just before the pandemic hit. So I'd ask all of you to throw your minds back to the early months of the pandemic, when I'll vividly remember the week in which 640,000 people began to go on to our live register. And in the early months of that pandemic hitting, everywhere I went, people were asking me two questions. Will austerity come back? And how are we going to get unemployment down when it hit more than 20% at one point? It now stands at 4.3%. And there are many, many different reasons as to why that level of employment has proved so resilient. But one of the reasons why, which is clearly fundamental to your work here today, is the incredible progress that we have made in supporting the skills and human development of those who go up to make what is the workforce of our country. And this, I believe, is going to be even more important in the time ahead, because in the time ahead, we now have to consider how we plan to create a workforce that is capable of responding back to a pace of technological change that is truly extraordinary at the moment. There are fundamental changes now taking place in the global economy, in our societies, due to the pace of digitization, which is now accelerating. And I personally believe we are on the foothills of a period of technological transformation that we may have to go back to many, many other centuries to find a comparable reference point. And the early development of the GPT technology, the early signs of the real exponential growth of artificial intelligence in our daily lives, in a few years' time, I believe will have changed the natures of our economy, which is why what we do with education will continue to be absolutely vital. And the starting place where we are coming from is a position of acknowledging a vulnerability, but also of strength. In acknowledging the vulnerability, it's the work that the expert group on future skill needs have done, where they've reported that 1 in 3 jobs is at risk of being affected by this kind of technological change. And in particular to acknowledge that jobs that would be at the lower skill end of our skill spectrum are jobs that are particularly susceptible to changes that can happen in technology. Now, on the other hand, I do remember all of the prophecies that argued that the rollout of ATMs spilled the very rapid end of bank branches. And while we are seeing, as you know, big changes in branch networks across our country, that's many decades after ATMs became available. And for so many years, the rollout of that kind of technology was accompanied by more people working within our banks. So that's the vulnerability. But the strength, on the other hand, is the fact that if you look at where we are within, for example, the European Union, we have one of the most highly educated populations within the EU, particularly for our fellow citizens who are below the age of 30. So we have to build on that foundation, at the same time acknowledging the moment of change that is really, really coming. And I see Leonard Hobbs here in the audience, and Leonard is doing amazing work recognising that glorious place and location in our country, Valencia, which is where Ireland was actually present at the birth of the communications revolution in the early 1800s, when the first transatlantic telegram arrived into Valencia. And those kind of moments are going to become more and more frequent. And the question is, how do we prepare ourselves as citizens first and foremost, but then also as workers to respond back to this? So that then leads on to strategy, the second S. And this is one of the many reasons why the government recently published Impact 2030, aiming to set out our strategic vision for both research and development, to look at how we could promote and we could support excellence, and to ensure that we have the resources in place to do this through the National Development Plan and also through the right structures in government. This is all about how we maximise the contribution of your work to our economic, our social, our cultural, our economic development. And critically, it's about how we can deepen the links between research and innovation and also enterprise. And what this strategy very much acknowledges is this will even be more of the part of Ireland's international offering in the time ahead, and critical in how we can advance a new agenda with regard to research and innovation. I'm reminded of the success we've had in this already, reading recently of the death of Gordon Moore, of the prophecies he made regarding the growth in computational capacity, the success that Ireland had in being in the right place to benefit from that kind of change, and the opportunity we have is, having done that once, can we do it again? And that then leads on to support, the final S. And this support is not just about the National Development Plan. It's not just about funding, though I know, God knows, how much funding matters. It's also about the S of structure within government. And it's one of the many reasons why the government, when it was formed in 2020, set up the Department for Further Education and Training, Higher Education, and the Department of Further Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. And my efforts to get the name of the department entirely accurate reminds me as to why we all refer to it in government as DFERS, as an acronym. And I'm delighted to see, of course, Jim Breslin, who's the Secretary General of the department, is present here. And I can see at first hand the work that DFERS has done over the last number of years in making the case not only from a funding point of view for the needs that all of you have and the sector has, but as importantly, from my point of view, is the work that's happening structurally in ensuring that from a share of voice perspective within policy making, this is a community that receives the representation within government that it clearly needs. And one of the reasons why this will happen is because we appreciate the impact that research and innovation will have not only in our everyday lives, not only in your campus, but also on our future economic development. It is the reason why then the government has allocated over €4 billion to the higher, further education, research and innovation sectors for this year, building on the research that has taken place and the growth that has taken place in investment in budgets 2021 and in 2022. And if you look at, for example, the capital allocation that the department has in 2021, it stood at €500 million. In 2025, it now stands at €652 million. And this year, the department has received just under €600 million in capital funding. Now, I know the case is always made for those figures being higher, for the expenditure even being at a higher level. And it's part of the role that I do, that everywhere I go, every meeting I go to, I'm always surrounded by people who want more, need more, and can make a great argument as to why they should get it. But the key point I'd make here is in while acknowledging that claim and the role that we'll play in trying to meet those demands in the time ahead, growth has still happened. The amount of resource that is needed and that is going into supporting your work is going up, and that in turn will allow us to support the expansion of the capacity of your work through the Higher Education Strategic Investment Fund and the Public-Private Partnership Programme, as well as new projects that are taking place under the Technological Sector Specific and Strategic Projects Fund. So just want to again acknowledge the contribution that you've all made, emphasise the value of those different elements of where we are with strategy, where we are with supports, and where we are within the structure of government to support your work, to acknowledge the work that the Irish University Association are playing in making the case for this sector within government, and the leadership role that Jim Miley is playing now in making the case in a very, very effective way for the right policies and right funding that is needed. I'm ever optimistic about our future, but we've no cause for complacency. I'm ever confident about the ability of our country to navigate our way through the challenges ahead, but equally determined that there's amazing opportunities there that we can avail of. And I believe the transformation in our country has been enabled by what we have done with education at all levels. But if it has mattered so much in our past, I believe it's going to matter even more in our future. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Minister. I'd like to invite our panel to join us up here. I'll introduce them as they are walking up. The Minister is staying with us, by the way. We have Professor Doyle, who, of course, is Provost of Trinity College, Dublin. We're also joined by Mark Redmond, Chief Executive of the American Chamber of Commerce in Ireland, and by Claire McGee, Head of Education and Innovation Policy at Ibec. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions when you were registering. Contrary to what you might have heard elsewhere, we are happy to take questions. So there will be a mic doing the rounds if you do want to ask a question. We do live in a democracy and we're happy to take questions. So just stick your hand up if you do want to get a question in. Minister, just before we move on with the rest of the panel, can I talk about the third S? Support just for a second, and you quite rightly pointed to the $4 billion a year, the capital funding and so on, but there is that funding for the future promise that you would close the 307 million euros gap in funding. I think last year's budget was 40 million towards that aim. That's what 13-14% of that. Is that pledge still in place? Can we expect more progress on that in this coming budget and budgets after that?
So, of course, we're committed to looking at how we can build on that progress, Shane. We appreciate, and this has been well illustrated, for example, through work such as that was led by Shane Castles in relation to the funding gap that is there. And I'm committed to continuing to work with Minister Harris, with Jim, regarding how bit by bit through the work of Dee Ferris, Secretary General Breslin, Minister Harris, at how we can make progress on that. If your next question then is going to be what's going to be in the budget, Shane, I'd have to...
What's going to be in the budget?
At this point then, I'd have to humbly say that we're only at the end of March. The budget is still some way away. But I've little doubt at all that when we do the budget, we will still find ways to make progress in the funding gap that we acknowledge is there. And I just want to say, just to thank you for acknowledging the point, Shane, that I've never turned up anywhere as a politician unwilling to answer questions.
No,
and today will be no different.
Yeah, that is very true. Linda, Provost, can I bring you in? As University Provost, as University President, how do you see universities contributing to national development?
So I suppose, Shane, I want to preface that with, I suppose, a context. And I do really love what you just said and the way you showed an appreciation for the universities, but I would say if I stand back and look that we don't really value universities despite some of the talk that happens. And I say that because I think if we did, and it kind of touches on the point, you very good, well did our job for us there, Shane, touches on the point, I think they would be sustainably funded with a really long-term view. I think we wouldn't have to justify ourselves so much, even though I realise that does happen in many sectors. And I also think it would be easy for people to find places to live near where they wanted to study. So I think for me, I think there's a lot to do if we say we really do value education. I see all of the benefits, and to answer your question more directly, I think we do already, as the Minister pointed out, we do already provide a huge number of skills that are relevant for this country. If you look across the university sector, there's just a breadth of disciplines and professions that come out of it. And we actually provide skills for areas we already know and actually areas that we don't know that the country is going to need. I agree with your comment that it's more than about the economy. You mentioned it earlier, and President Higgins would say that himself about university has to be more than the economy. I think we provide training in critical thinking. That is a crucial part of the democratic fabric of the university, I think, to our points that we just made. I think research is hugely important. It's important in the way we translate it into innovation, as the Minister mentioned, but it's also the fundamental research that gives us the resilience for the unknown. That is just so crucial. And I also think universities are places where you change lives. And I know that's a very grand statement, but 25% of people who come through Trinity now all come from non-traditional backgrounds. We're actually sitting in a location here where we offer a PG cert for, actually it's offered here and all around the country to anyone and everyone, especially people who may be out of employment and want to get back in. So I think universities really change people's lives. And maybe to wrap that up, and you're used to being in a place where people always speak about funding. If you look at the EUA, European Universities Association Public Observatory on Funding, Ireland consistently lands in the group of universities that are part of a system in decline. And the way they measure that, they measure the amount of money going in and the amount per student. And we have actually given less money per student year on year. So what we're actually saying is that we value less and less and less our young people. And I do look at the strong economy, and I look at the fantastic tax take, and I look at the skills, the training fund, the National Training Fund, and I think we could do something spectacular for the long term where we change that around and say we actually do value people. So I think we already do a lot. We can always improve, always putting my hand up and saying that. Yeah. But I think we need to put our money where our mouth is and value the students in this country.
Minister, we'll get to the training fund in a second, but on the broader point about putting your money where your mouth is, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I appreciate the point the Provost is making that I know many people in this room agree with, and I know the audience who are in would agree with too. I spend all of my days going to meetings and events like this. Every moment of my role as a minister is dealing with sectors and claims to spend more money and to invest more. So I completely appreciate the validity of the claim that you're making. But in any given day, I will be dealing with the same claim from multiple competing parts of our economy and our society. And that is the nature of the dilemma that you continually face when you're in government.
Well, politics is about choices, Minister. I mean, you look at, say, a country like Portugal, they made a decision a number of years ago. We are going to invest, plough money into third level to get a return on that. Is that something, is that a road we should be going down, do you think?
Yeah, but there would be also other areas that we have prioritised for investment that, Portugal hasn't, and you do have to make choices. For example, within education in the round, we have had a massive expansion at primary and secondary level in educational investment, reflecting the demographic nature of our society and the demand that is there for school buildings and for support for students. And even now, as you're aware, there's always the legitimate and understandable need for more of that to happen.
Okay.
And I guess the point that I would make here, while appreciating fundamentally the legitimacy of the case and the impact that it can make, and it's personally transformed my own prospects by being here in Trinity College and benefiting from the education I could receive. It's also the case that I don't want to spend tax money that it turns out we're not going to have available to us tomorrow, because I've been around before in politics while that has happened. And then secondly, there are so many different competing claims we have to kind of evaluate against, and there are few claims that have seen such recent growth in funding as this sector has.
I do want to bring in Claire and Mark, but did you want to say a very brief final word on this?
I suppose I just want to say that we often talk about the absolute transformational thing that is education, and especially third level education, and I think we can't say that without recognising. I completely understand the other claims, but I think the difference that about a university sector is that it actually feeds into all those other claims. It impacts the health service. It impacts huge other areas of the public service. It impacts the tech sector. It impacts actually civil society and cohesion. And that to me is why it's kind of, I suppose, and everyone probably says this to you, a more powerful claim than all.
Okay. Claire, can I bring you in? Let's talk about one of the recommendations of the Cassell's report that actually did happen, that employers contribute more to the National Skills Fund. I think we now have a surplus, and we can come to the Minister on this in a minute. I think it's something over €1 billion.
Yeah.
How can that money be used to, I suppose, develop those skills that your members need from employees, do you think?
I think, so the Minister clearly articulated 2.6 million people are now in work. That's phenomenal, but those 2.6 million people are going to be in jobs that are going to be transformed over the next 18 months, over the next 2 years, over the next 3 years. So we need to see a really, really strong focus then on supporting their employability within those jobs so that they can stay and we can continue to kind of grow all the time in higher order, be more innovative, more competitive, and actually make a more compelling case to continue to invest in Ireland. The NTF, €1.25 billion, and as you mentioned, Shane, employers kind of made that commitment to continue to increase their investment into it. So we in Ibec, we developed I suppose it's known as the NTF manifesto, and I'm happy to share it again. We have a couple of key points in that. Number one, develop a national training voucher scheme. So every single business in the country who contributes into that can actually draw down from for education and training purposes with an accredited university, technological university, or an education and training board to be able to support their staff. Because at the moment, a lot of the programs that are in the NTF, not every single business in the economy can actually be supported through it. Number two, enhance then the provision of modular, flexible online education, so that again, it's all about access and ensuring that people can kind of participate in it. Also, targeted supports for employers to be able to engage with existing programs. Like apprenticeship, we have new post-2016 consortia-led apprentices where it's actually quite expensive for a lot of smaller companies to engage in those programs, so they're currently kind of locked out of it. Yeah. And then finally, I would say that all needs to be wrapped up in a national strategy for lifelong learning or workforce development. So how do we build that impetus and the mechanisms to be able to unlock the National Training Fund, and then put the different kind of organisational factors in place within our education and training system, and then within enterprise to be able to kind of unlock this NTF.
So in a nutshell, what's your ask of the Minister?
Spend the money and put the appropriate, unlock the money, release the money, and give direct supports to business to be able to engage with the education and training system.
Okay, Minister, not the first time I'd say you've been asked to spend the money, but there's this huge pot there. I think, is it going to be 2.5 billion, I think, by 2025? That's what they're talking about. I don't need to tell you about the skill shortages that are there in the economy. Can this money be unlocked and used to try and plug that gap?
So I was actually the finance minister who put up the rate of PRSI to put the money into the fund in the first place. So I remember attending the event, I think, in Idy House, where I made the case for employers' PRSI go up to put the money into the fund. And what has happened is, even though we've made a number of withdrawals from the fund, because of the change that has happened in the amount of tax overall that we're collecting from an economy that's grown so quickly, at the end of each year, funding has been left that cumulatively has then created the surplus that we've just referred to there. So 2 points on it. The first one is, as I've learned from the Social Insurance Fund, a surplus can very quickly turn into a deficit, really, really quickly. And we do need to be aware of the fact that these things can swing in both directions really, really quickly. But secondly, there is a fair point there that there is funding inside this fund that we did raise through PRSI with the aim then of investing it in skills, and we are looking at some options in relation to it. The challenge that we do have is once the money is spent, it counts as normal government expenditure, and it runs against the needs that we have to manage our expenditure inside certain levels. And that's the bit we need to interrogate further, which we are at the moment.
Okay, I'm just going to pop a question to Mark, but just maybe we'll take a question from the audience. So if anyone wants to ask a question, maybe just stick your hand up and I'll come to you. But I do want to ask Mark, I suppose, as the representative of US companies, and we all know how important they are to this economy, what do you want to see from universities in terms of how it can help your members develop even further in this country?
Well, Shane, first of all, I'm really grateful to be on this panel and really grateful to Jim Miley and Leah O'Sullivan for the invitation to speak today on behalf of the American Chamber. I'm also really grateful to Trinity College because I'm a graduate of Trinity College. I'm an arts graduate in English and history, and Provost, you're right, it's a life-changing experience to come here, and for me that's really true because the real reason I'm grateful for Trinity College is I met my wife here, Elaine Hanley, and Elaine now works for IBM, but Elaine is an engineering graduate. So it's truly a marriage of arts and STEM. In fact, Provost, Elaine wanted me to say thank you to putting the STEAM into our relationship, so we're very grateful.
We take credit for everything.
And we'll probably edit that out from the replay. Anyway, Shane, to answer your question...
Might be a bit too late for that, Mark.
This isn't live, is it? Shane, what I did to prepare for this great opportunity is I spoke to a lot of multinational leaders who closely engage with universities. And the first thing they asked me to do was to thank the university sector, because yesterday we launched our 2023 US-Ireland Business Report. And you said everybody knows about it, Shane, but if you don't mind, it's no harm saying US companies directly employ 209,000 people in this country and indirectly employ a further 167,000. And every year, they spend 30 billion euro in the economy. So that's what we're talking about. It would not have happened. It would not have happened without the extraordinary university sector. So that's the first thing. The second thing, Shane, is they asked me to answer your question under 3 headings: national reputation, national capability, and national cohesion. And the questions they wanted me to pose was, what kind of story do we want to tell the world about our national reputation when it comes to our country's economic competitiveness? What do we want to tell the world about our state's ambition and commitment to ensure we have the skills and confidence to compete on a global level in areas including industry, politics, social sciences, and humanities when it comes to the university sector? They also asked me to remind everybody, and we all know this, but the state's public-private commitment to pure and applied research is a very easy metric for multinationals, quite frankly, to gauge where future investment is going to be located. Under national capability, the ability of Ireland, and I say Ireland as a whole, to pick research winners, and forgive me for using that phrase, I know it's not appropriate for this setting, but it's the kind of language multinationals would use, to pick winners when it comes to research. And I do want to really pay tribute to Minister Donohoe, because it was Minister Donohoe's idea, I think if it's fair to say, probably originating from engagement with the sector, to establish the Disruptive Technological Innovation Fund, which I think has been a very, very, very massive and important development. But the third thing, and I think Minister, you used the word soul. I want to read this out from one of our leaders. Furthermore, a balanced focus on humanities and social education and research enhances the national capability and reputation of Ireland as a nation for whom the soul is as important as the engine. And in that context, I want to call out the great work being done on access programs. I'm going to conclude now, Shane, you'll be happy to hear, with the third one, national cohesion. And Provost, you were on stage when Professor Eva Lanonen hosted you on 6 March, and she channeled Newman by saying, the purpose of a university is to cultivate minds. And I just think the university sector is so important in this crazy world, where if you express an opinion, you can be literally torn apart. This is a place where ideas get debated. This is a place where new ideas come. And I have to say, I think ChatGPT and all that is an opportunity, because I think it's a transformative opportunity to move away from answering predictable questions, but instead coming up with new questions, ideating questions we haven't thought about before, debating them and joining the dots as to how we can actually kick on to the next level in relation to that. So, hope that's okay, Shane.
No, that's perfect. Just to focus on RD, I was interested at the sign at the door, disruptors welcome, I think it said when you come in the building here. Are we there yet when it comes to developing, R&D and so on? Because we talk a lot about the knowledge economy here. Are we, like you would have experience of other economies around the world where US multinationals are. How are we doing in that space?
So Shane, there are people in this room, and I'm looking around this room, who are world-class innovators. And it happens because of the extraordinary base we have and the reputation we have built. But we're also ambitious for the next thing, right? And the impact strategy for 2030 is very, very welcome. But I will call this out. We're probably investing, public-private investment in research in Ireland is currently about 50% of some of the countries we compete in for the next wave of investment. So we have stunning examples of excellence. And if we didn't have them, Ireland wouldn't be at the global edge on medical technology, on semiconductors, on pharmaceuticals. But AI is coming, quantum computing is coming, machine learning is here, etc. Let's get ahead of that too. And I know the Minister would agree with that.
Yeah, Provost, you want to
can I just add in there? I mean, the most significant disruption that we need to deal with is the disruption relative to our planet. And that calls us actually to question everything we do, to question our economic systems, to question how every single industry works in this university, in this country, how every person lives their lives. And there's people in this room actually that are at the heart of that. And I think the reason why we know they're real disruptors is because people aren't listening to them enough yet. I think there's a certain point, it's easy, and I think the points you make, Mark, are excellent, but it's easier to be a disruptor about AI. It's easy to be a disruptor about technology. And that's why I think universities, that to me is just such the powerful point. We have to offer alternative futures. And if anything, this planet so needs alternative futures. And that's the disruption even beyond what you're talking about, Mark. And that's, I think, where universities come into their own strength, because I don't think we are offering a way forward for the people of Ireland. We're not offering a way forward for the future of agriculture. We're not offering a way forward for a lot of these sectors, and I think we can stand up to that.
Drive that and lead that. Okay, all right. We have some world-class innovators here. Have we any world-class questions from the audience? No, none at the moment. Okay. Well, sorry, we do. Yeah, sorry, here. Yeah. I think just hang on, and there's a mic coming here because there are people at home who won't be able to hear you. So, yeah.
Hi, so I'm Alva Noonan. I'm with the University Times, reporting on the event today. I have 2 questions for you. The first is, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the ongoing struggle for postgraduate rights and for workers' rights and a living wage. And I suppose my question there is, are there plans to invest in that segment of universities as well, to look into providing a living wage and workers' rights to postgraduate researchers, a lot of whom are key fundamental players in developing universities, developing research, developing the futures that we all want? And the second question then is about the Irish language in universities. since the Irish language is kind of a major part of our heritage, it's something that we should be kind of looking to preserve. What will be the plans? Are there any plans to invest in Irish language resources at third level and beyond, especially given that there was a protest yesterday and there have been a number of protests around about a more cohesive Irish language curriculum? Thank you very much.
Okay. Linda, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can. So it's a complicated question, and one of the things I would say, I think there's an awful lot we can do to make the life of PhDs better. In Trinity, we have made a major change to the scholarships that we're in control of ourselves recently, and we moved the stipend to 25k. We did feel actually we couldn't give out to other people for not doing that if we were not leading the way ourselves, so we're very proud of that. I'm not fully on board or totally supportive of the worker status. I think when PhDs do work, they should get a proper contract. It should be acknowledged. They should have proper conditions. But I have a lot of questions in my own head, and I think this goes to the point we were talking about earlier about democracy and debate. There's debate going on in Trinity. Without a doubt, 100% behind better conditions, living a stipend, being able to actually fully engage in their degree, their research, but a lot of debate on what is the best route. So I'll just say that.
Okay.
And then the second point was about
Aaron Changa.
Oh
Irish
yes,
language.
yes. I'm actually on Duolingo myself, trying to improve my Irish. But there are huge changes in legislation that are going to have a major impact for all of the universities. Everything from how we tweet to how we advertise, and actually, I think the legislation there, you're probably aware of it, Minister, is going to make a significant change.
We're talking about the soul of the nation. What is Tirgan Changa, Tirgan Anam? Isn't that what they say? Without nation, without a language.
Actually, that's a really important point. There are books in Trinity that only Irish, written in Old Irish, that only a very small number of people can now read. And this goes to your point earlier about the soul of the nation and your point about the kind of wider thing than the economy. To keep those going, we need our Department of Irish to continue to thrive, however small it is.
Okay, I'm hoping to come back here as a graduate in Irish for one day and do something in Irish. But anyway, I'll talk to you about that again. Anyone else want to? We'll take one more question, and we'll come back to the Minister on something else.
Just in relation, as you all know, it's 25 years since the important Good Friday Agreement, and the Department of Further and Higher Education, I won't say the rest of it, as well as the government through the Shared Island Unit has been extremely supportive in recently funding the Co-Centres programme managed by SFI and others, as well as the HEA programme. And would anyone like to comment just on, including the Minister, on the value of HEIs driving research and innovation, working with industry partners, and the importance of that to the future of the island?
Minister, do you want to take that?
Just to simply acknowledge that it's seen as a very important priority of the Shared Island Fund, and both the Taoiseach and the Minister for Higher and Further Education have looked at many different opportunities regarding how they can use that funding stream that is separate to the funding that is available to the department itself to progress joint projects that can be of benefit not just to the all-island economy, but to continuing to embed the legacy of the Good Friday Agreement. So it's seen as a very important area, and I know some of the first allocations that were made from that fund were for projects in that area.
Okay, Claire, you want to come in?
Ciara, great question, and as you'll be aware, Ibec have just recently launched a campaign to kind of really acknowledge the 25 years since the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And I think the reason for that campaign is to show that, you know, peace is quite fragile, and that the economy has grown out of kind of peaceful structures. So the fact that we are now able to engage collaboratively across both sides of the border is a really positive thing for all Irish businesses, because they're looking at this all-island agenda, looking at the talent across the agenda or across the island, and seeing how can then they kind of contribute to that as well. So it's really important that we continue to invest in these kind of initiatives and the Shared Island Unit to ensure that there is collaboration around the whole island, because there's magnificent work coming from Northern Ireland, magnificent work here. Let's try and join this up together.
Just briefly, Shane, I think I also want to point out, and this has been said to me repeatedly, when leaders from corporate in the US come to Ireland, they can't believe the level of collaboration between universities and the business sector, both multinational and domestic. So that's our proximity, and that's the way we engage, right, which is terrific. And also, we were honoured to have Professor Orla Feely, who's in the audience, I think, incoming president of UCD, speak at our conference yesterday. She emphasised the importance of alliances, university alliances, both on the island and internationally, within Europe and globally, and we fully endorse that as well. But one thing we really love, Shane, is the incredible work that the universities do to support startups and scale-ups and lots of spin-outs, right? But actually, one point that was made to me by a number of my leaders was they'd love more spin-ins, where entrepreneurs can come to universities. And I know this happens here, right? So I'm not saying it's not happening, but I'd love to see more of it, that we enable, bright ideas to actually engage with universities and scale up.
Okay. The clock is against us, guys. So can we rattle through a few quick things? Minister, I do want to ask you about this employment control framework. When I talk to people from third level, they say, our hands are tied, we can't hire, student numbers are increasing, and yet we're restricted by the numbers we can hire, and our hands are tied because of that. What do you have to say to that? Are there changes that can be made there?
Yeah, but this again is
Back to choices?
Well, it's the choices that are made for.
Well, I don't mean that in a glib way. I mean,
yeah, I know you didn't, but it is the key challenge that we do face. That we do have to be certain about how many people we're employing and why, because one of the many lessons that we learned from many years ago is what happens when we are not clear on how we manage the overall size of our public sector. So we do have an employment control framework in place. As it happens, the area that I'm most familiar with trying to bring flexibility to, is actually meeting the requests that come through on it for academics who can bring so much to the universities that they're in.
Okay.
So we do try to use, and I do use, the flexibility in the ECF to make decisions. But there's simply no point pretending in front of any audience that there can be a limitless environment in deciding how many people the state employs.
Fair. No, that's
because
fair.
there is.
Okay.
And we have to manage that, and within that framework, try to show flexibility.
Linda, I imagine you want to say something on that, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I take your point, and I don't think by us looking to lift the ceiling a bit, we completely recognise it can't be limitless. I mean, what I would say time and time again, and I suppose I'll always take the opportunity to say it, for me, the best thing we can do for the universities is think about the core funding that comes into the universities, allow kind of really long-term term thinking by ensuring that that core funding increases. And that in itself will also give us the kind of flexibility to continue to be disruptive, to actually respond to things. And that to me is where it needs to sit.
Okay, Claire, can I ask you just, it's an issue you hear brought up quite a bit at the moment. We have the highest level of people going to third level, I think, in Europe. But is there an argument too many people go to third level, that maybe we should be looking at more apprenticeships? Is that something you hear back from your members?
I suppose traditionally we've probably funneled a lot of individuals into the same post-second level opportunity.
Yeah.
And the way I would see it is, it's rather than developing alternative pathways to higher education, what we need to be focusing is on twin pathways beyond second and into, so you need to be, as Linda was saying there, prioritising the developing excellent universities, prioritising the development of excellent apprenticeship systems. It's a skills matrix, or as I like to call it, this talent, or this tapestry of talent, and enterprise is going to pull on that tapestry and source the diversity of different kind of educational experiences. The link between the degree and the job, that once tight link is now loosening, and that's why we still need to continue then really to focus on building excellent universities so that we can have a powerhouse of research and innovation, and then still give people the opportunity to find their passion, helps find their potential, realize their potential, and find their pathway to work. So it's rather than alternatives where you just fund one thing over the other, you have to fund all and everything to achieve that.
Okay. Mark, can I ask you just finally about the tech sector? Sort of slightly wobbly times, and let's not get carried away. There's the numbers that have been let go. It's very unfortunate for those involved, but they are a smaller percentage of the numbers that are still employed here. How concerned are you at that, and what do you want to see from government? You talked about this radical change that's going to happen. What do you want to see from Ireland Inc. to ensure we still have that talent, that highly skilled, innovative talent coming on stream?
Shane, I will answer. I want to support everything Claire said and add, I don't think too many people are going to universities. I wonder, are too many people going to universities at the same time? And I just think, again, we hear the importance of lifelong learning, upskilling, micro-credentialing. So maybe it's not the numbers going, but actually the sequence. To your question. Shane, look, you're absolutely right, and you are right. We stand in solidarity with people who are really worried right now because they have commitments, they have families, and it is very tough. And numbers and statistics don't often comfort people, but here are the numbers and statistics. The total announced level of redundancies is 1.7% of the total number employed in the tech sector. The ESRI issued a report yesterday saying there are as many job vacancies in the tech sector as there are people who unfortunately are going through very challenging times right now. But Shane, here's the deal, and you made the point, Linda, and it was a great address you made in Maynooth, that you said, you made the point, all women need to become technically literate, right? And here, guys, I didn't know this. I don't know who measures this. There's 84 zettabytes of data in the world today. That's 1 trillion gigabytes. That's today. By 2025, it'll move from 84 to 185 zettabytes. So the tech sector isn't going anywhere.
Okay. Where are we going to store it all, though?
In the cloud.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I might just ask you maybe a brief summing up observation from all of you in relation to that issue about how our universities can contribute to our national development. Minister, I'll give you the first word.
So beyond the facts and figures that we've just talked about there, and beyond the economics that we've talked about, I think there is a moment of great opportunity but also challenge for humanity at the moment. We are in the middle of many multiple changes, any one of which would change our way of life. And they're all happening now. Climate, digitization, the effect of a war, major changes happening in our economy. And I'd think of it on a personal level as opposed to a societal level, though one, of course, influences the other, how we can equip our citizens to understand and to respond back to that change and to think about it critically.
Okay. Linda?
I think I would concentrate on the word change as well. And as we sit here in a university that's over 400 years old, I think sometimes we underplay, or people don't realise that what a university is about is a place that's constantly striving, constantly changing, constantly evolving. And to Mark's point, we know that the landscape is changing. Our Vice Provost is here, is leading out on a major project where we look at every and all forms of how education is delivered. We put ourselves under pressure to say, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it the best way? We know that our research changes every day. So to me, I think not alone can we deliver for the economy now, or for the nation now, I think universities are just in the right place to deal with change, to deal with uncertainty, and to be able to kind of push forward despite that.
And can I ask you a question that I often mull on? I mean, Claire's point about the linkages between, and it's important, between universities and employers, but you also want kids to go to university to learn, not like, when my son, who's in second year here, said, what job would I do if I did that? I was like, forget that. Go and do the course and expand your mind, and the rest will fall into place. But how do you get that balance right? Because obviously we don't, we do want them to have a career then after that.
I would say to you that, first of all, you're saying the exact right thing to your son. And secondly,
He didn't listen.
And secondly, I would say there is nothing you can learn here in a university that doesn't have an implication or is relevant for the challenges that the Minister just spoke about.
Yeah.
Right across every discipline, right across the 3 faculties we have here and the multiple more disciplines in the other universities, because we are in such a difficult state of our world that all of those skills matter. Languages, critical thinking, arts, humanities, health sciences, STEM, everything.
Yeah. Although, just thinking, Minister, you did politics and you ended up in politics, so it was a kind of a good preparation.
That wasn't the plan, though.
No,
that wasn't the plan.
I'm sure it was.
It wasn't planned.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. Claire, sorry.
Very quickly, I suppose we've heard about the scale of transformation. I don't think we know the breadth or depth of what that transformation is ultimately going to be. So what we need to see is, within our university system, is how they can scale up and gear up and build their industry-led competence so that we can have joined up thinking between undergraduate teaching and learning, research and innovation, continuing and lifelong learning. Because at the moment, the three don't really meet. So how do we thread that better together to be able to give students at every level, at every touch point at their age and across their careers, the best experience we can do? But we can only do that if we fund them to the level that they deserve to be funded and need to be funded.
Okay, Mark, the last word.
Shane, Michael Crowe, he's president of Arizona State University. Many in the room probably know this. He co-wrote a book, Designing the New American University, and he calls for a new model. And this is what he says. The objective of the new model is to produce not only knowledge and innovation, but also students who are adaptive master learners, empowered to integrate a broad array of interrelated disciplines and adapt over their lifetimes to changing workforce demands and shifts in the global knowledge economy.
Okay, thank you. Minister, Provost, Claire and Mark, thank you indeed. A warm round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, we'll just have some very brief closing comments now from Professor Kerstin May, who of course is President of University of Limerick and Chair of the IUA Council. Just while Kerstin is Kerstin here? Oh yeah, she's here. Yeah, so do you want to come up here, Claire? While Claire is walking up, can I just say, it was a point I made to Linda when I chaired the debate, the hustings in Trinity a number of years ago, 2 years ago I think it was, and there was 3 brilliant candidates, female candidates, going for it. When I was in Trinity back 1986 to 1990, I didn't have one female lecturer. When I look back now, it seemed normal at the time. It's ridiculous when I look back. And can I just say how fortunate we are to have such brilliant women heading up our universities and colleges in Ireland. And one of them is here to talk to you now. So I will get off the stage.
Thank you very much, Shane. I think we had a fantastic discussion here led by the keynote by Minister Donohoe, and it's great to see that there is a uniform view on the profound value of higher education for society. Universities are pivotal assets for the nation with a critical role to produce the talents that are highly skilled, that are diverse, and that are capable to innovate. Universities are think tanks, ideas factories, as Linda said, that provide a space for critical thinking, for develop the talent of the future. And we need, and I'm delighted, I come from the arts and humanities, I'm delighted that the arts, humanities, and social science have been included in that value statement. We need the ensemble of disciplines to create graduates who are able to live with uncertainty and ambiguity, who are resilient, who can embrace complexity, and to have the skills to know how to learn in order to master the challenges of the future that we don't quite know how it will pan out. So, and universities make a significant contribution to that. We have heard that the country is facing a major skills shortage in both the public and the private sector, and that we need a workforce that is employment ready for the future, i.e. that the professional fields are changing all the times. And universities have already demonstrated that they are ready to respond and to deliver the necessary programs of study and the underpinning research in order to shape the skills for tomorrow. And we have also shown that we can do that increasingly in flexible ways through, as Claire articulated, through modular online and hybrid provisions, micro-credentials, certificates, professional diplomas, and to support learning throughout the life skill. We need to think long-term. The talent cycle is by nature 4 to 5 years long, so it's essential also for government to take a decade-long approach to investing in our future human capital that is so essential for the Irish knowledge society. And we heard from Mark for its reputation internationally, for its competitiveness, and for its health and well-being in the future. We welcome the firm commitment by government given in 2022 to address the shortfall of 307 million per year in core funding to higher education to secure a standstill. We also welcome the investments that have been made in new development, and we look forward to work with the Minister and his colleagues delivering on the commitment in the upcoming budget. Employers have played their part by contributing to the National Training Fund, where the surplus is now over 1.2 billion euros and growing. And it must be a government priority to find a way to unlock the National Training Fund surplus and invest in our peoples and skills and include the universities in that, so that we can continue to make our contribution to develop the human capital for the Irish knowledge society. There would be much more to be said. I wanted to emphasize, in order for the universities to perform and to enhance their performance, we also have to renew ourselves, our research infrastructure, our learning environments to go with the times. That requires capital investments, and while we will welcome the Minister's outline of the capital investment that is being made into the sector, I just wanted to emphasize we need that, we need more, and we need to think about not only bricks and mortar, but digital infrastructure to meet the needs of the future. And can I just say a thank you to the speakers, to Minister Donohoe, to Professor Linda Doyle, to Mark Redmond, and to Claire McGee, and to Shane for expertly moderating for a really stimulating and very enriching discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, that pretty much wraps up our event for today. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and thanks to our brilliant panel, and thank you, Kerstin, and for those kind words as well. You're absolutely right. The panel was fantastic. It was a pleasure to moderate it. A very quick thank you as well to the Department of Foreign Affairs EU Division for the loan of the EU exhibition, EU 50 exhibition, I should say, that you see all around you there. Do grab a bite and have a wander around and take a look at the wealth of information on the panels charting Ireland's 50-year membership, and very successful 50-year membership of the EU. The next Future of Ireland event will take place on the 15th of June with the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly, giving his views on the delivery of future skills needed for the health sector. Invites for that will be going out after Easter, but that's our lot for today. Take care. Thank you.